The family of retired Army Sergeant Felix McDermott has now filed a federal lawsuit against the VA and 7 of its employees, alleging medical negligence and wrongful death. Felix McDermott died on April 9th of 2018 after being injected with insulin even though he was not diabetic. His death was ruled a homicide. So far, there are 10 other similar cases of suspicious deaths at the Clarksburg VA.
This is astounding, to be honest with you. These cases make no sense medically, and so these doctors they either didn't care or they were incompetent.
The 11 deaths have very similar circumstances. All of the victims were being treated on floor 3A at the Clarksburg VA. All of their conditions were improving, and most were non-diabetics, but most received fatal insulin shots. Despite VA policy to flag unusual deaths known as adverse events, no one on the VA staff raised a red flag.
So everyone was just a complete missed opportunity. And the amount of system failures at this hospital are absolutely astounding.
Sergeant McDermott's death was the 7th in this chain of events, but his family members were the first to go public. I spoke with his daughter, Melanie Proctor, last November.
I think this should never have gone this far. I think something should have been caught sooner. I think the VA failed us and failed the families and failed these guys.
In all, 6 of the victims' families have now come forward publicly. All are planning similar lawsuits. Aside from this, the first federal lawsuit filed against the VA in Clarksburg alleging negligence and wrongful death, there is also a federal criminal investigation. A grand jury is seated at the federal courthouse in the Northern District, but so far no criminal charges have been filed. At the U.S. District Courthouse in Charleston, I'm Mark Curtis, 13 News, working for you. Good afternoon, it's 13 News. We're looking for Retta Mays. Is she home? For the past several months, we have confirmed through multiple sources that the person of interest in the suspicious deaths inside the Clarksburg VA Medical Center is a woman by the name of Retta Mays. On this day, we knocked on the door of her Reynoldsville home in Harrison County. Hello, is anyone home? Now, Retta Mays' name has surfaced again. She is mentioned 3 times as a defendant in a federal lawsuit filed on behalf of the family of Army Sergeant Felix McDermott, one of the VA homicide victims who died from an insulin shot, even though he was not diabetic. As I go through this complaint, I see the name Retta Mays 3 times in here. Can you tell us about her significance?
She was definitely involved in his care. She was the first one to do a glucose finger stick after the diagnosis of the severe hypoglycemia.
Severe hypoglycemia, which can be prompted by an unwarranted insulin shot, was the cause of Sergeant McDermott's death. Now the question is, who administered it? Here's what we know about Retta Mays. She's a 45-year-old former West Virginia corrections officer, and she worked on VA Floor 3A where all the suspicious deaths occurred. And she was terminated by the VA. Sources tell us she claimed to be a certified nursing assistant when applying to the VA, but a state database for those licenses does not turn up her name. Felix McDermott's daughter told us in November the VA dropped the ball.
If they didn't know she wasn't certified, that should have been in her background check. That should have been something they had on record, that she had her certifications.
We're not at liberty to discuss certain parts of the case. She was involved actively in Mr. McDermott's care, and we make that clear in the lawsuit.
Hello, it's 13 News looking for Retta Mays. Finally, someone inside the Mays home told us to leave the private property or they'd call police. While Retta Mays may have been named in a federal wrongful death lawsuit, it's important to underscore that she has not been charged with any crime. A criminal investigation in the Northern District of West Virginia, though, continues. Outside the federal courthouse in Charleston, Mark Curtis, 13 News, working for you. 46-year-old Rita Mays entered guilty pleas today on 7 counts of second-degree murder. She also pleaded guilty to a separate count of attempted murder. Federal prosecutors say Mays gave unauthorized injections of insulin to these patients, even though most were not diabetic. Her motivation remains unknown to investigators, but those shots proved fatal.
The victims' families had to be on board with the plea. They were uniformly clear that life imprisonment and a much more expeditious path toward a conclusion of the case were extremely important factors to them.
The courtroom was packed with nearly 30 family members of the victims. They talked about Mays' betrayal of our veterans and the nearly 3 years of uncertainty as the investigation slowly progressed.
I felt kind of sad for how long she has to spend there, for life, will probably be. But I know Dad was 84 years old, and I know he had a lot of years left in him, but he came a little bit short.
So far, investigators say they don't know Rita Mays' motivation for killing veterans. Each count of second-degree murder carries a maximum life term in prison, plus she gets another 20 years for the attempted murder charge. The bottom line, Rita Mays will be spending the rest of her life in federal prison. In Clarksburg, I'm Mark Curtis, 13 News, working for you. On Tuesday, 46-year-old Rita Mays entered pleas of guilty to 7 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Mays was a nursing assistant at the VA hospital in Clarksburg. Now, several wrongful death lawsuits and a congressional investigation will aim to find out why she was even hired in the first place.
The investigation is not over. We need to find out how someone who was unqualified was able to be in a room with our veterans, strictly unsupervised, to be able to do such a horrifying act. She falsified her resume. We do know that.
In court on Tuesday, Rita Mays admitted to the judge that she had no medical licenses, degrees, or certifications. She has yet to explain why she deliberately injected the veterans with fatal doses of insulin, even though most were not diabetic. A lawyer for many of the families says it took the VA over a year to launch an investigation.
In these cases, there should have been bells and whistles going off when you had a non-diabetic end up with a blood sugar of 12 or 17. That is not natural, and there's only one explanation for that. But this hospital undertook no investigation to determine how in the world somebody would have gotten a blood sugar that low.
Mays was not charged in a number of other suspicious VA deaths as the victims were cremated, and that destroyed key evidence. So far, 3 federal civil lawsuits have been filed against the Veterans Administration alleging negligence and wrongful death. A 4th lawsuit will be filed soon. As of now, no court dates have been set. In Charleston, I'm Mark Curtis, 13 News, working for you.